How each type is misunderstood. ESTP. ESTPs have a reputation for being wild, thrill-seeking, and adventurous to the point of being reckless. This often obscures the method in their apparent madness, though. Ultimately, they are ultra-logical, rational, and realistic types. People who aren't going to jump into anything without instinctively calculating the risks involved. Also, their desire for being free from too many obligations is because they know that when they do commit to something, they're going to be disciplined, dedicated, and follow through. ISTPs. ISTPs might be perceived by others as lazy, lounging, and lacking in direction at times. People who are going with the flow, seemingly aimlessly. However, underneath that appearance, they are like a coiled spring, ready to pounce into action. Although they might not have a concrete plan, over the course of their life, they've imbued themselves with the skill set to adapt and improvise. When you can problem solve in the moment, like they can, it doesn't make as much sense to limit yourself with too many plans. ENTPs. ENTPs are seen as people who are innovative, unconventional, and lack respect for norms, traditions, and conventions. However, in some sense, types like ENTPs are the ones who bring about those things eventually. After all, the type of person who reinvents the wheel is probably the kind of person who would invent the wheel in the first place. INTPs. INTPs are often detached, not just in other people's view, but in reality. People often misread this though. It's not coming from a place of arrogance or condescension, it's simply in their nature to see inaccuracies, inconsistencies, and contradictions. They are wired to pick up on this stuff. They do this to themselves as much, if not more, than other people. ISFJs. ISFJs are seen as people who are attached to stability in life, but that's not quite right. They desire stability and secure foundations precisely because it's the sure footing that allows them to branch out, take risks, seek adventure, experiment, and be unconventional. ENTJs. ENTJs are often seen as people who, apparently, always know better. They know the right path to take, the flaws of a thing or a person, and how to correct those flaws, the best strategy, and so on. But ENTJs are fundamentally people who want to learn and seek personal improvement. If you challenge them, and you're right, they'll be the first person to accept that, and, even more than that, will greatly enjoy it. ESFPs. ESFPs can appear like people who desire the spotlight and attention to be on them, always. However, this comes from a place of wanting to give people good experiences, to entertain, perform, and just give people a fun time. Also, any impulsiveness on their part might appear reckless, but because of their adaptability and, more importantly, their resilience and bounce-back ability, their calculation of risk is simply different to most people. ENFPs. In the eyes of certain people, ENFPs can seem like unrealistic, fantasy-dwelling creatures who are far too willing to let their imaginations travel deep down weird and wonderful paths. What other people often misunderstand, though, is that ENFPs see ideas as self-justifying things. Things that are worth it in their own right, regardless of whether they go any further than that. INFPs. Just like their NFP cousins, the ENFPs, INFPs can also come across as unrealistic to certain people. Maybe that's the impolite word for dreamer. They might also see INFPs as people who lack ambition. What those people misunderstand is that INFPs have very different criteria for assessing success and define their goals less in terms of where their path leads them, but how they walk down it, being careful that each step feels right. ISTJs. ISTJs get painted as dry, boring, and overly normal, if that's even possible. But in reality, they are deeply passionate people who love and embrace life in a profound way. They can appreciate their loves, passions, and interests with a detail-oriented precision that mines the depths of enjoyment in a way that is inaccessible to many other types. ESTJs. ESTJs can come across as demanding, controlling, and bossy in the eyes of other people. Yet in reality, because they are fundamentally pragmatists, they just care about getting things done and solving problems. It doesn't matter whose idea they use, and they're actually totally open-minded. ISFPs. Often seen as being artistically inclined and overtly emotional, people overlook the intellectual nature of ISFPs. They are highly intuitive in a way that is balanced, and therefore more reliable and more powerful, being able to see patterns and make connections that are grounded in data and reality. Also, they are rarely going to be overtly emotional. In fact, they'd rather process their emotions in private instead of broadcasting them. INFJs. There is a tongue-in-cheek caricature of INFJs being psychics, but their way of thinking, or coming to conclusions or insights, isn't particularly unusual, in the same way that you might, after hearing a puzzle or riddle, partially forget about it and let it float around in your mind, then suddenly find yourself thinking about it again, but now with the answer. That can be how certain types process information, and is definitely the case with INFJs. Things are left to percolate, from which they can find connections and draw conclusions. ENFJs. ENFJs are sometimes thought of as people who make their decisions based on emotions, or are somehow biased, irrationally, towards this way of being. In reality, ENFJs are every bit as logical as any other type, and make their important life decisions based on that. It's simply that they see the benefit of not beating people over the head with unempathetic deliveries of their opinions or advice. Perhaps why ENFJs are more effective in giving both of these things to people. INTJs. INTJs are often described as being robotic and coldly calculating, concerned with planning their way to whatever goal they have in mind. In reality, though, although it might not be obvious, they are deeply emotional and passionate. In fact, they kind of have to be, otherwise they wouldn't be able to find the requisite motivation. Also, instead of being purely rationalist in their mindset, they're also open to surprisingly out there and unusual ideas as well. ESFJs. Certain people and certain types will often look at ESFJs as being phony or disingenuous when it comes to their approach to people. However, what those other people and other types don't realize is that it comes from an authentic place. It's an insatiable and irrepressible interest in people. Also, in contrast to that trait, ESFJs are equally as introspective as other types as well. It's just that they don't lose touch with people and fall into the introspective abyss like other types do. Feel free to check out all of the links below, which include the Love Who Discord server and the Love Who website, where you can request a video or sign up to be typed. Also, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. It makes a big difference to the video and the channel overall.